The wormhole was not calm. It was alive with storms of energy, tearing at the ship called Endeavor. Every second the shaking grew worse. Lights flickered across the ship, sparks leapt from panels, and alarms filled the air. Inside the council chamber far away, aliens of many worlds watched in silence. They had expected the humans to cry out for help, but instead they heard calm voices. Each message carried the same steady rhythm. "We've got this." But the council knew the truth. No ship had ever escaped a collapsing wormhole. The mathematics were too complex, the forces too strong, and the chances of survival too small. To them, it was an impossible problem. Still, the humans did not stop. Working against the storm in the bridge of the Endeavor, Captain Mira held her chair with both hands as the ship rocked. Her voice carried through the speakers. "Report one by one. I need status." "Engines are overheating," said the chief engineer. "Cooling systems are failing, but we can slow the burn if we divert power." "Navigation struggling," said the pilot. "Wormhole currents shifting too fast. Charts are useless." "Shields at half strength," another officer added. "If they fail, the hull will not last." Mira listened to them all, then spoke with calm strength. "We stay focused. Remember?" She paused, her eyes sweeping across her crew. "We've got this." The words steadied the crew like an anchor in a storm. Each one nodded and turned back to their work. The council chamber echoed with those words carried through the open signal. Aliens leaned forward, confused but fascinated. The debate in the council. "They cannot win," said a scaled elder, shaking his head. "Look at the readings. No species has ever solved this." "But they do not seem afraid," whispered a feathered envoy. "They face the impossible as if it is a puzzle." "It is foolish," argued another. "They will die and their words will mean nothing." Yet others remained quiet. They could not stop watching. The humans were fragile in body. Yes, but their voices were strong, steady, and filled with something the council rarely saw: determination. The human way in the ship's engineering section, sparks fell like rain. The chief engineer, a man named Roan, worked with a small team. Their screen showed red warnings. Cooling systems were close to failing. Roan wiped sweat from his forehead. "All right, people, we can't fix this the normal way." "Ideas fast," one crew member hesitated. "We could redirect plasma through the auxiliary lines, but that system was never built for it." Roan grinned through the chaos. "Never built for it? Perfect. Let's try." The crew looked at each other, then nodded. Within moments, they began rewiring moving parts, forcing the ship to do something it was never designed to do. Back in the council chamber, alien scientists frowned. "What are they doing? That system is not for power flow. It will destroy the ship." But then the readings changed. The engine temperature slowed. "The dangerous rise leveled out. They made it work?" One alien gasped. "They used the wrong tools in the right way," whispered another. "Who does that?" "Humans," said a quiet voice. "A problem of numbers on the bridge," the pilot struggled. The wormhole currents were like rivers inside rivers, each moving in strange patterns. Charts could not predict them. "We can't map it," the pilot muttered. "It changes faster than our computers can calculate." A young navigator raised her hand. "What if we don't map it? What if we ride it like a storm current? Like sailors used to do with oceans?" The pilot blinked, then grinned. "Old Earth style, huh? I like it." Together they began plotting not fixed numbers but flowing paths. They treated the wormhole not as a machine to control but as a wild ocean to ride. The council chamber buzzed. "They are guessing," one alien scoffed. "No," corrected another. "They are feeling. They are watching the flow instead of fighting it." They turned chaos into a guide. The alien voices lowered as the Endeavor slowly shifted, moving with the currents instead of against them. For the first time, the path began to look less impossible. Teamwork and chaos everywhere in the ship. Humans worked together. No one froze, no one gave up. They shouted ideas, corrected each other, and built strange solutions from scraps. One team used metal panels to strengthen weak parts of the hull. Another rerouted power through old circuits that had not been touched in years. Each choice was risky, but each one worked just enough to keep the ship alive. The phrase spread through every room. "We've got this." It was spoken when systems failed. It was spoken when repairs held. It was spoken when fear tried to rise. The council listened to those words again and again until they began to feel like more than words. They were a rhythm, a heartbeat, a reminder that humans refuse to surrender. Alien reactions. The scaled elder who had doubted them earlier now frowned in thought. This is not luck. They are building solutions where no solutions exist. The insectoid diplomat clicked his jaws. They act like a hive, yet without a hive mind. How do they move so well together? The feathered envoy spread her wings slowly. They share one belief. They say, "We've got this." It ties them like threads. The council chamber grew heavy with quiet. What had once been a show of mockery was now becoming a lesson. The aliens were not watching a failure. They were watching something new. The test of will as the humans worked. The wormhole storm grew worse. Lightning of energy struck the shields. Each hit made the hull shudder. The council thought the ship would break apart, but Mira stood tall on the bridge. Her voice never shook, shields failing in sections. Called an officer. "Then we patch what we can," Mira replied. "Move power, shift resources. Keep going. We've got this." The crew obeyed without question. Even when the lights dimmed, even when gravity flickered, they held to her words. The aliens stared, unable to look away. The turning point hours passed like minutes. The Endeavor was still inside the wormhole, still alive, and yet the danger was greater than ever. The council believed the final collapse was near, but then something changed. The humans' new calculations revealed a strange possibility. The navigator pointed at the screen. "Captain, look. If we push engines at exactly the right moment, the collapsing wave might throw us forward instead of crushing us." Mira studied the numbers. "The chance of success?" The navigator hesitated. "Small," Mira smiled. "Small is better than none. Prepare the engines." The crew moved instantly. The council gasped. No other race would try such a reckless plan. But the humans were not like the others. As the ship prepared, Mira looked at her crew. "Whatever happens, remember this. We've got this." The words settled into every heart. Fear became strength. Doubt became focus. The council heard it too, and many felt something new inside themselves. Hope. The impossible problem. The moment arrived. The wormhole shuddered, collapsing around the ship. Energy waves surged. The Endeavor launched its engines, pushing into the storm. The council chamber filled with light as the screen flared. No one could see what happened. For long seconds, only static filled the air. Then a voice came through the signal. "Calm, steady, human. Course adjusted. Engine stable. We're still here." The council chamber erupted with voices. Some shouted in disbelief. Some whispered in awe. Some simply stared, unable to find words. The impossible problem was not yet solved. The Endeavor was still inside the storm. But humans had done what no one else could. They had turned certain failure into another chance. And all the while, their message never changed. "We've got this." The ship Endeavor groaned like a living creature caught inside a storm. Every surface shook, every light flickered, and every system carried strain far beyond its design. Yet, even with the danger pressing close, the humans did not collapse into despair. They kept moving, thinking, and fighting. In the council chamber, the galaxy's elders watched the scene unfold on the great crystal screen. For many, it was the first time in centuries they had leaned forward with true anticipation. The wormhole had already destroyed ships greater than the Endeavor. It had swallowed fleets from cautious species. No one had ever escaped its collapse. And yet the humans still pressed forward, bound by one phrase that echoed in every room of their vessel. "We've got this." The ship at its limit, on the bridge, Captain Mira gripped the railing. Her eyes scanned the flashing reports. "Engine strain at 95%, reported Roan, the chief engineer. His voice steady, though sweat ran down his face. "Shields down to a third," said the officer at defense. "Any more strikes and we lose full coverage." "Navigation holding us on the current," called the pilot. "But the next surge will tear us off path." The ship was breaking. Everyone could see it. But Mira did not let her voice shake. "Listen to me," she said, loud enough for every speaker across the ship to carry her words. "We are not finished. Every one of you knows what to do. Keep moving.
Keep thinking.
And remember," her voice grew firm, "we've got this." The council chamber carried her words. For a moment there was silence across dozens of species. The phrase was simple, yet it carried weight beyond its meaning. Strength in small actions. In the engineering bay, Roan made quick decisions. "We need reinforcement here. Pull that coolant pipe." "But it's not built for this," a young technician said. Roan grinned, voice strong. Neither are we, but here we are, do it. They pulled parts from less critical systems and used them to patch the failing engines. It was not perfect, but it worked enough to buy time. On the hull, repair drones crawled like insects, guided by human hands. They welded broken plates and sealed cracks as the ship shook around them. In the medical bay, doctors moved quickly, treating burns and bruises. Even the wounded repeated the same phrase, whispering it to each other. "We've got this." The council saw this unity. One alien murmured, "They do not wait for perfection. They act with what they have." Alien doubt crumbled for centuries. Many alien civilizations had prided themselves on flawless design and precise calculation. They built ships that lasted 1,000 years, engines that never failed, and shields that could withstand any strike. But when those systems broke, they often had no answer. The humans were different. Their ship was weaker, but their minds were flexible. They did not panic when plans collapsed. They simply made new plans. A scaled elder who had once mocked them now leaned forward with a frown. They should be destroyed. Yet they rise again. "What is this?" The feathered envoy answered softly. "It is grit, the power to hold on when nothing should remain." The storm breaks harder. The wormhole shook again, harder than before. A surge of energy slammed the Endeavor. Half the lights went dark. The ship tilted as if pulled into a whirlpool. "Main shields gone," shouted Defense. "Hull breach in Section 12, cried another officer. Alarms wailed. The council chamber filled with a glow as the screen showed sparks bursting across the ship. In the middle of chaos, Mira's voice rose. "Seal Section 12. Everyone else, stay focused. This storm will not break us. Say it with me." And across the ship, voices joined as one. "We've got this." The council heard thousands of human voices together, shouting through the storm. For some aliens, it was the first time they felt shivers in centuries. Improvisation at its peak. Roan's team faced disaster in the engine room. A plasma conduit burst, fire spilling into the chamber. Automatic systems failed. Without hesitation, Roan grabbed a heavy shield plate and used it to block the spray. "Close that valve," he shouted. "But the tools?" a crew member began. "Use your hands if you must," Roan bellowed. They worked with speed and desperation, slamming the valve shut. The fire died. Smoke filled the air, but the engines lived. In the council, alien scientists gasped. They should have been destroyed. How do they continue? "They refuse to surrender," an insectoid diplomat said, voice low. "Where others stop, they keep moving." The captain's gamble Mira studied the storm currents flashing across her screens. The wormhole was collapsing faster. If they stayed on the current, they would be dragged into the heart of the storm. She turned to her navigator. "Options?" The navigator hesitated. "1. A split-second opening in the outer flow. But if we miss it, we're gone." Mira nodded slowly. "Then we won't miss." The pilot swallowed hard. "Captain, that's not a safe path." "Safe paths don't exist here," Mira answered. Her voice rang with steel. "Trust the crew. Trust the ship. Trust the words we live by. We've got this." The bridge crew looked at her and felt their fear turn to fire. The leap of faith. The moment came. The wormhole surged, tearing open a brief path. Mira gave the command, engines full burn. "Navigation, lock the current now." The Endeavor leapt forward, engines screaming. The ship rattled as if it would split in two. Panels exploded, sparks showered across the bridge. But they held course. On the screen, the council watched the impossible. The small, fragile human ship slid into the narrow opening, riding chaos with impossible precision. "Unbelievable," whispered one alien elder. "They make danger their path," said another. The near collapse. Just as hope rose, disaster struck again. A second wave of energy hit the ship, throwing it off balance. The Endeavor spun, alarms blaring. "We've lost alignment," shouted the pilot. "Stabilizers offline," cried navigation. For a moment it seemed all would be lost. The ship twisted inside the wormhole, seconds from tearing apart. Mira stood tall. Her voice cut through the chaos. "Listen to me. Look at your stations. Find the answer. We've got this." Her words lit sparks in tired hearts. The pilot slammed controls, using thrusters in ways they were never meant to. The navigator recalculated paths by instinct. Engineers rerouted power blindly, trusting each other. Slowly, painfully, the ship steadied. The council chamber erupted in gasps. They pulled back from the edge. Impossible. Respect grows. The council had once laughed at humans. They had once dismissed them as fragile dreamers. Now, silence ruled. One alien, old and wise, spoke softly. I have seen empires fall to fear. But these humans, they bend fear into strength. Another added, perhaps we are not the teachers here. Perhaps we are the students. Across the chamber, heads nodded. Respect was growing, unwilling but undeniable. The storm's end approaches. The wormhole continued to collapse. Its walls cracked with violent energy. But the humans had found a rhythm. They worked together as if one mind, each voice joined by the same phrase. We've got this. It was not a boast. It was not arrogance. It was faith in themselves and each other, in their will to endure. And as the council watched, even the most doubtful began to believe that perhaps these humans truly did have this. The Endeavor still faced the final collapse. But already one truth had been made clear. No matter how fragile they looked, humans carried grit like no other. The Endeavor was battered but still moving. Every section of the ship carried marks of fire and stress. Panels hung loose, wires sparked like tiny storms, and the engines roared with all their remaining power. Yet the humans did not stop. They had survived worse than any other species thought possible. The wormhole's collapse grew faster. Massive energy surges tore at the walls of reality, threatening to crush the ship completely. The Council of Aliens leaned closer to their crystal screen, a mixture of fear and awe in their eyes. No species had ever survived this long inside a collapsing wormhole. Yet inside the Endeavor, Captain Mira remained calm. Report, she called, voice steady despite the shaking. Shields critical, said the officer at defense. We have only 5 seconds of full coverage left. Engines overheating, shouted Roan from the engine room. We can push a little more, but that is the limit. Navigation, Mira said. Can we use the collapse to our advantage? The navigator studied the rapidly changing currents. There is a small opening, Captain. If we time it perfectly, the wave of the collapse could act as a slingshot. Mira paused. Small chance? Very small, the navigator admitted. Mira nodded. Her eyes scanned her crew. We do not have a choice. We take the chance. Remember, we've got this. The council heard her words and leaned forward. A dozen species whispered, unable to believe what they were about to see. The final plan, the crew moved as one. Engineers rerouted power to the engines, calculating the exact moment to fire. Navigation officers locked onto the tiny gap that would give them a chance. Shields were reinforced at critical points, and the remaining drones moved to protect vital systems. All teams ready? Mira asked. Every voice responded with determination. Ready, Captain. Then we go, Mira said, pressing the command. We've got this. The Endeavor lurched forward. The engines flared brighter than ever, consuming every ounce of power left. Sparks flew as systems struggled to keep up. The wormhole's currents shifted violently. The ship was pushed in multiple directions at once. Time seemed to slow. Every creak and groan of the hull echoed in the ears of the humans. Chaos becomes opportunity. The ship spun and twisted inside the storm. The navigator shouted new instructions. Adjust thrusters. 20 degrees starboard. The pilot's hands flew over the controls. Correcting. Correcting! Engineers shouted as sparks rained down. Hold the plasma flow! And all the while, Captain Mira's voice carried through the chaos. We've got this. The council chamber watched in stunned silence. They had predicted failure, yet the humans did not seem afraid. They treated danger as a puzzle, something to solve, not something to panic about. They are impossible, one alien whispered. They are something else entirely, replied another. The slingshot moment, the ship approached the collapsing heart of the wormhole. Energy waves crackled like lightning in a storm. The navigator shouted over the alarms. Now, Captain! Fire engines at full thrust! Mira pressed the command. The Endeavor screamed forward, leaning into the collapse instead of resisting it. The hull rattled, shields flared, and sparks flew everywhere. The alien council gasped as the ship seemed to be torn apart. But slowly, against all odds, the Endeavor began to glide along the currents. The chaotic energy that should have destroyed it became a tool, pushing the ship forward like a perfect wave in a wild ocean. The council had never seen anything like it. Even the most experienced species could not have imagined this. Courage under pressure. Inside the ship, every crew member acted with precision. No one froze. No one panicked. Engineers patched systems mid-flight. Pilots corrected tiny deviations. Shields were reinforced at the last second. Even the medical team worked on injuries as the ship shook violently. A young doctor looked at a patient, smiled, and said, "Keep calm. We've got this." The phrase echoed through the ship, and each human drew strength from it. Fear became fuel. Doubt became determination. The Endeavor was no longer just a ship. It was a symbol of human spirit, refusing to be broken even in impossible odds, alien reactions. The Council had once predicted doom. Now they could only watch. One elder, a scaled being with golden eyes, whispered, "They are not afraid of death. They make it irrelevant." An insectoid diplomat clicked its mandibles. "They act as one mind, yet remain individuals. How is this possible?" A feathered envoy tilted her head. "It is not skill alone, it is will. They bend danger to their choice." Even the skeptics had to admit something. Humans were different. Not stronger than every other species, not faster or more powerful, but stubborn, united, and unyielding. The turning point. The Endeavor approached the final moments of the wormhole collapse. Energy waves twisted and shifted like a living thing, threatening to crush everything in their path. "Brace for impact," the pilot warned. Mira's eyes were calm. "Impact is what we make it. Engines at maximum. Shields reinforced. Hold steady. And remember," she smiled at her crew, voice firm, "we've got this." The ship dove into the heart of the collapsing wormhole. Every system strained to the limit. Sparks rained down corridors. Panels shook loose. The hull creaked as if it might tear apart, and yet somehow they moved with the storm, riding it instead of being crushed. The escape seconds stretched into eternity. Then the impossible happened. The Endeavor shot out of the wormhole like a stone skipping across water. The storm of collapsing energy flared behind them. Waves of light and power slammed together where the ship had been, and the wormhole finally gave way, disappearing into the void. The ship floated in the calm of open space. Systems smoked and groaned. Panels were cracked. Shields barely held. Yet the humans were alive. The council chamber erupted in reaction. Aliens gasped, whispered, and even cheered quietly. They had witnessed something no one thought possible. Human triumph on the bridge of the Endeavor. Mira slumped into her chair, exhausted but smiling. "We made it," said the navigator, eyes wide with relief. "Not just made it," Mira corrected, "we thrived. We've got this." The crew laughed, cheered, and hugged each other, still shaking from the near-impossible challenge. Even the engineers, covered in soot and sweat, smiled. They had faced certain danger and emerged victorious. Their skill, courage, and unity had turned the impossible into reality. The lesson for the galaxy. The Council could not stop talking about what they had just seen. They had expected disaster, but humans had shown something different. The power of grit, teamwork, and unshakable will. "They did not simply survive," whispered the scaled elder. "They took what should have killed them and made it serve their goal." "They speak as if they already hold victory," said another alien. "And somehow they achieve it." Even the younger species on the Council leaned forward in admiration. Humanity had demonstrated that raw determination could outmatch experience, power, or technology. A new understanding. For the first time, humans were no longer seen as fragile newcomers. They were something else. Unpredictable, ingenious, brave, and most of all, united. The phrase, "We've got this," began to take on new meaning across the council chamber. It was no longer just words. It was the spirit of a species that refused to be defeated. The Endeavor still floated in the void, battered but unbroken. Its crew was tired, hurt, and exhausted, but triumphant. They had faced impossible odds, and they had succeeded, and the galaxy had noticed. The Endeavor drifted into calm space, leaving the collapsed wormhole behind. Sparks still flew from damaged panels, and smoke curled from sections of the hull. But the humans aboard were alive. They had faced what no one thought they could survive, and had succeeded. On the bridge, Captain Mira exhaled deeply. Her crew sat around her, exhausted but smiling. Engineers patted each other on the back. Pilots wiped sweat from their faces. Everyone had pushed past fear, exhaustion, and the impossible. "We did it," said the navigator softly. "No," Mira corrected, smiling tiredly. "We made it happen. We've got this." The words echoed through the ship. They had been their mantra, their strength, their proof that even in the darkest moments, humans would not surrender. The council watches far away. The council of alien civilizations sat in stunned silence. No one had expected to see the humans survive. Every prediction, every calculation had said they would be destroyed. Yet there they were, alive, victorious, and seemingly stronger for it. The scaled elder leaned forward. I have witnessed many species in my long life. I have seen genius and power, but never have I seen courage like this. The insectoid diplomat clicked its mandibles softly. They do not rely on power alone. They rely on will, on faith, on unity. The feathered envoy spread her wings slowly. They faced certain death and turned it into survival. They have changed how we will view this species forever. Even the most skeptical of the council could not deny it. Humans had earned respect, not by their technology, not by their size or strength, but by their spirit. The journey home, the Endeavor turned toward its home system. Every movement of the ship reminded the crew how fragile they truly were, yet how strong their determination could be. Roan, the chief engineer, checked systems again. Most of the ship is holding together barely. But we did it. I can't believe it, Mira smiled at him. Believe it. You made it happen. Outside the ship, stars streaked past as they traveled home. The crew remained quiet for a while, each person reflecting on what they had accomplished. They had faced impossible danger and survived, not through luck, not through rules, but through courage, teamwork, and determination. Messages across the galaxy. The council had been watching in silence for hours. When they finally spoke, their voices carried respect instead of doubt. They said, "We've got this." And they did, said the silver-skinned elder softly. They did not just survive, another replied. They thrived in chaos, made solutions from scraps, and faced fear without hesitation. They are unlike any species we have known. Rumors began to spread across galactic space. Other species whispered to each other about humans. Stories of their courage traveled faster than any fleet. Humans were no longer unknown, fragile newcomers. They were unpredictable, inventive, and unstoppable when united. Human spirit recognized on the Endeavor. The crew began sharing stories from their journey. The moments of fear, the moments of teamwork, the moments when they had thought all was lost but still pressed forward. Every story was joined by the same phrase. We've got this. They laughed at near misses. They cheered for small victories. They reflected on their own strength, recognizing that it was not technology alone that had saved them. It was their unity and courage. Even the youngest crew members, those who had never faced such danger before, now felt the truth of their captain's words. Humans could survive anything when they worked together and believed in themselves. Alien reactions grow stronger. Across the galaxy, alien observers discussed humans in ways they never had. The council convened to analyze what had happened. They act as one, yet they are many, said a member of the council. Their strength lies not in machines or numbers, but in courage and adaptability. They do not fear the impossible, added another. And that makes them dangerous. In a good way. They can change outcomes where others would fail. Even species who had once ignored humans now studied them. Young diplomats and explorers took notes. Humans were becoming known as a force that could not be dismissed, no matter how small or inexperienced they seemed. The return home. The Endeavor finally entered the human star system. The crew could see their homeworld in the distance. Their journey had been filled with danger, uncertainty, and tests that could have ended them. Yet here they were, alive, proud, and wiser for it. Mira stood on the bridge looking at her planet. We did what no one expected, she said softly. We made the impossible happen, and we will do it again. Her crew smiled, nodding. They had faced fear, chaos, and death, and had survived by trusting each other and themselves. A message for the galaxy. The humans had learned an important lesson. Courage and unity could overcome even the most impossible odds. And the galaxy had learned the same lesson by watching them. The phrase, "We've got this," became more than words. Among humans, it was a reminder of their strength. Among aliens, it became a symbol of hope and unpredictability. No other species had faced the same test and emerged victorious. And none would forget the lesson humanity had taught. Spirit could outweigh power, will could overcome fear, and unity could defy the impossible. Legacy begins. The council continued their discussion long after the humans left the wormhole behind. They debated what this meant for the galaxy. Do we fear them? Asked one alien diplomat. No, replied the elder. We respect them. They have shown courage, intelligence, and unity beyond what we imagined. They are not to be underestimated. Stories of the Endeavor spread quickly. Young species on distant worlds whispered about humans who laughed in the face of danger. Experienced veterans admired their daring. Even the most cautious civilizations realized that humans might one day change the balance of power in ways no one could predict. Humans look ahead for the humans aboard the Endeavor. The journey home was also a moment of reflection. They repaired what they could, shared experiences, and celebrated their survival. But they did not become arrogant. They knew the galaxy was full of dangers and their journey was only the beginning. "Next time it will be harder," said Roan, smiling at the crew. Mira nodded. "And next time we'll still say it. We've got this." The crew laughed softly. It had become more than words. It was their bond, their guide, and their truth. No matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The galaxy remembers. By the time the Endeavor returned to orbit above Earth, the story had spread across the Council. Humans were no longer the timid species from a small planet. They were inventive, daring, and united. "They faced the impossible," said one elder, "and made it happen. They inspire," said another, "and one day they will lead where others cannot." The galaxy had learned to respect humanity. They had learned that small, determined hands and hearts could achieve what vast fleets and ancient technology could not. And somewhere, far across the stars, the simple phrase continued to echo. "We've got this." It became the motto of humans. It became a lesson to all species who heard it. And it became proof that courage, unity, and determination could turn the impossible into reality. The humans had survived the impossible storm. They had returned stronger, wiser, and ready for the next challenge. And the galaxy would never forget the day they learned that humanity, though young, fragile, and untested, could make the impossible happen. The year was far from peaceful. Earth, once full of light and proud cities, now stood scarred by the war that had almost ended humankind. The war had been fought not against each other, but against a race from the stars. The Veer. Their fleets had come without warning, crossing the black of space like a tide of fire. In the first days of the war, humanity had tried to fight back with everything they had. Fleets of ships had risen, carrying the flags of Earth and its colonies. Soldiers had sworn to defend their homes. But the truth was simple and cruel. Humanity was not ready for such an enemy. The Veer had technology that could shatter cities in a single strike. Their ships moved faster, their weapons cut deeper, and their defenses were nearly unbreakable. Planets fell one by one. Colonies burned. Earth itself had been struck in orbit. The skies filled with fire when human fleets were broken. Billions feared that the end had come, and yet the end never came. The Veer had the chance to destroy Earth, to wipe out the species they called weak and unworthy. Many of their leaders argued for it. To them, humans were nothing but a threat that might grow stronger one day. But one Veer commander stood against them. His name was Commander Serac, a soldier of the Veer fleet who had studied humanity more closely than most. He argued in the great halls of the Veer that humans, though young and reckless, carried a spirit that was rare. They fought when they had no chance of victory. They resisted even when defeat was certain. He believed that such a spirit was not dangerous, it was valuable. The Veer Council, divided, chose to listen. Against the voices of those who wished for Earth's ruin, they chose mercy. Their fleets pulled back, leaving Earth battered but alive. When the humans watched the skies clear, they did not cheer. They did not feel saved. They felt broken. Their cities lay in ruins, their fleets shattered, their colonies gone silent. No message came from the Veer, no promise of peace. Only silence. It was not a gift of peace, but a sentence of survival, handed down like a cruel joke. And yet humanity endured. The years that followed were hard beyond words. On Earth, survivors gathered in shattered cities, clearing rubble, searching for food, and struggling to rebuild what little remained. Many feared the Veer would return. Some cursed them for not finishing the war, believing mercy had only stretched out the suffering. Others whispered that perhaps the aliens had seen something worth sparing. In the colonies that had not been completely destroyed, life was no easier. On Mars, the domes that had once glittered with life stood cracked, patched with makeshift repairs. On Luna, mining stations worked with broken machines. On the outer moons, families clung to survival, patching ships from scrap and scavenging supplies. But the strange truth was this. The harder life became, the stronger humanity's spirit grew. In one ruined city on Earth, a man named Captain Rin walked among the rubble of what had once been a great starport. He had been a soldier in the war, one of the few who survived the fall of the fleets. His uniform was long gone, replaced by patched clothes and rough boots, but his eyes carried the memory of battle. Children ran past him, laughing despite the broken streets, their games echoing off the cracked walls. Still alive, he whispered to himself, almost like a vow. Across the city, engineers worked with what little power they could gather, rebuilding generators. Farmers cleared land to plant again. Teachers, though with no schools left, gathered children under broken roofs to tell them stories and teach them words. The people were wounded, but they were not defeated. Captain Rin knew that this spirit was their greatest weapon. The Veer had left them alive, perhaps thinking that broken humans would stay on their knees forever. But already he could see that this would not be so. Far away, beyond Earth, survivors in the colonies whispered similar words. On Mars, a woman named Mira worked day and night with a group of young engineers. Their tools were simple, their machines half-broken, but their goal was bold. They wanted to make the first ship to fly again after the war. "This world is not the end," she told her team as they worked in the dust. "We are not done with the stars." The ship they built was not large nor beautiful. It was patched with metal from old mining rigs and powered by engines scavenged from broken freighters. But when it lifted into the thin Martian sky for the first time, the people cheered. It was a sign. Humanity had not forgotten how to dream of the stars, and somewhere far above, the Veer still watched. Commander Sirach kept records of humanity's struggles. Other Veer mocked him, saying, "See, they crawl among ruins. They will never rise again," but Sirach only shook his head. "You do not understand them," he answered. "The more they are broken, the more they rise." On Earth, legends began to form. Children who had never seen the war listened to stories told by elders. They learned about the fleets that had fought against impossible odds, about soldiers who refused to retreat, about engineers who built weapons from scrap. They also learned about the Veer who could have ended them but chose not to. To the young, that story was not one of weakness, but of promise. "They gave us mercy once," the children whispered to each other, "and we will repay it. Not with fear, not with silence, but with greatness." Captain Rin, Mira, and others like them became quiet leaders, guiding scattered groups of survivors. They did not call themselves heroes, but their actions lit sparks of hope. Where walls had fallen, they rebuilt. Where machines had died, they repaired. Where despair lingered, they spoke of tomorrow. Slowly, painfully, humanity began to stand again. But deep in every heart lay the same question. Why? Why had the Veer spared them? Why leave a broken world alive when it could so easily be destroyed? Some said it was mercy, some said it was cruelty, and some believed it was a challenge, a test to see what humanity would become. Whatever the reason, one truth was clear: the story was not over. Humanity had been spared once, and that choice would echo across the stars. As the sun set over the ruins of Earth's cities, Captain Rin stood on the cracked rooftop of the starport. He looked up at the sky where stars glimmered faintly through the atmosphere. He raised his hand as if to reach for them. "We are not done," he said softly. "One day we will rise again, and when they see us, they will remember the mercy they gave. They will see that it was not wasted." The night was cold, the world still broken, but in the silence the promise of a new legend began to grow.